Welcome to Rivals National Signing Day Live. I'm Jason Fitz. He's Adam Gorny. Of course, he's the expert national recruiting director for Rivals. For the next hour, we are going to get you caught up on every piece of breaking news. You're going to hear from superstar coaches. You're going to hear from future superstar players, and we're going to do all of it on National Signing Day Live, presented by Invesco QQQ. But we start with the most important thing. I'm going to be honest with you guys. A couple hours ago, we didn't think we had any drama. An hour ago, we didn't think we had any drama. As we come to you live right now, might have a little bit of drama. Everybody's had their eyes on Jeremiah Smith. We all know how important he is going to be to this recruiting class. This morning, looked like it was signed, sealed, and delivered. Everybody's confident. Ohio State fans are screaming, OH, and everybody's screaming, IO back. But as we sit here now, Gorny, I don't know. What is going on?
Yeah, there's drama. He has not sent in his letter of intent. It is 8 o'clock Eastern. The word is that the person who runs his NIL has the letter of intent. We will see if it's sent in to Ohio State. I reached out to Ohio State's SID to get Ryan Day on our signing day show. He went home for the holidays. So we will see how this plays out, what's going on. I don't want to report anything that we don't know specifically. But Jeremiah Smith picked Ohio State today, but he has yet to send in that letter of intent. There's some drama here.
Before we get to any of this, there's a lot to break down for a second, so I'm going to take us off the rails quickly. Tell everybody, in case you don't know, what difference would Jeremiah Smith make in a recruiting class? The way you would view Ohio State or the way you would view wherever he ends up?
Yeah, Ohio State is known for recruiting elite wide receivers. Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, down the line. He would be the best of the best. He is the best high school wide receiver since Julio Jones, a 6'4" difference maker on the outside. He's elite. So if it came down to Ohio State and Miami, there's some word that some people close to him wanted him to be at Miami. Immediate starter at Miami, immediate contributor in the Buckeyes too.
Here's what I can promise you. He's got his phone. If he's in his phone, it's because we're trying to get the latest, greatest breaking news for you. We will get you the breaking news as it comes. There's a couple other players before we get back to Jeremiah that I want to make sure we mention off the top, though, because it was a significant day across signing day. KJ Bolden, obviously somebody that as we started this morning in the wee hours of the morning, you had your eyes on.
Yeah, we prepare, graphics for all these kids and their flips, so we look smart when we do it. Committed to Florida State. It looked like Auburn might have gotten him. He ends up at Georgia. He told our Jed May from UGAsports.com that he decided on Georgia 3 weeks ago and then let everybody sort of think that he was going to go somewhere else. So KJ Bolden to Georgia is a huge one. He's a kid from Buford, Georgia, 5-star safety.
Yeah, and the fact that he knew weeks ago just reminds us what an inexact science all of this is, because you spend, and everybody at Rivals spends months, spend all year grinding, listening to families, talking to coaches, just trying to be involved in the process. To be able to keep that sort of a flip possibility, that secret seems pretty stunning to me.
Yeah, much more like an inexact art than an inexact science. It's really 51 weeks of a lot of going through the recruiting process. Everything, almost everything happens in this last week, if not the last few hours.
Okay, so let's get to another prospect here. Armando Blunt, somebody also that all eyes were going to be on today.
Yeah, this one was not as surprising as some others. He had been committed to Miami early on, flips to Florida State, had been committed to Florida State throughout the season, flips back to Miami. He had visited there this past week. It was the word that his mom invited Miami media and Miami fans to the rec center today to see the signing. So that's pretty telling.
Yeah, by the way, that many flips kind of makes my head spin. For all of the conversation we're having about what happened today, and what happened today has been incredible, I don't want to lose sight of the fact that there was already a major win in this process, right? Just because it wasn't a photo finish doesn't mean Nebraska isn't out there talking their talk. We all know Will Compton out there on social media with busting with the boys. Will is reminding everybody that the top quarterback prospect, Dylan Rhule, is headed to Nebraska. I don't want to lose sight, just because it didn't happen today, of how significant that is for the college football landscape.
I talked to Matt Rhule today, and I swear I saw a champagne bottle uncorked there. Yeah, Rhule is huge, and there's so much momentum that goes into it. He's a 5-star quarterback. He's the #2 player in the class. He's the best 5-star to ever go to Nebraska in Rivals history. That's over 20 years. So he's going to be a huge one for them. Could be the starter next season in Lincoln.
Don't you feel like it changes a little of the perception of the program as a whole to land somebody? I know he's got ties. We all understand he has ties. You still have to land the kid. You still have to get the kid there.
Absolutely, and you beat Georgia for him. So, he was committed to Georgia for a long time. He moved from Arizona to Georgia for his senior year. It looked like Georgia all the way. 10 days ago, he calls Matt Rhule and says, maybe my heart is somewhere else. Matt Rhule wasn't even really recruiting him at the time, but since then he was.
Yeah, it can't be an accident that Rhule recently sat at the podium and reminded us all that if you want to get a big-name quarterback, you're going to have, millions of dollars in NIL. Message received, Coach. Well done by you. Well played in the politicking. Now, you mentioned you talked to Matt Rhule earlier. I'm going to tell you now, you're going to hear some of that later on. We've also got Mike Norvell coming up later on throughout the course of the show. Also, if you're just new to what we're doing right here, you can check out the YouTube links. We talk to a ton of coaches over the course of the day. Big names, all sorts of programs. It's all right there for you. In the meantime, throughout the course of this show, you're also going to hear from several of the top prospects, not the least of which is the one we started this show with, Jeremiah Smith. As much as we don't know how this is going to end up, we know how it started. Here's how the announcement went down earlier today as he decided where he was going to go.
The #1 recruit in America, Jeremiah Smith, officially an Ohio State Buckeye. How does that part sound?
Sounds good, man. I'm finally a Buckeye. Great. Can't wait to get up there for sure.
Obviously, there were some nerves going into the announcement. A lot of people here to see if you would stick with the Buckeyes or stay in your home state. Take me through the announcement and how you felt during that process.
Going through the announcement, man, I felt nervous. It came down to a close call between Miami and Ohio State. But, I just go with my gut feeling, just go who developing the receivers into the first rounders. So that's why I went with it.
Yeah, we know about the Buckeyes' track record, and you've been committed for over a year at this point. What else made you comfortable enough to stick with the Buckeyes?
Just the way they care about their players, on and off the field. They're one of the best paid players. It's a family up there in Ohio. Thanksgiving, have coaches have their players come over and eat with them and stuff like that. So, it's definitely a brotherhood up there in Columbus for sure.
How relieved are you?
Oh, I'm relieved. It's been a long year for me with all the visits and all the crazy things people saying on Twitter. I'm just happy to get all this over with, for sure.
Yeah, wait till you start playing ball on Saturdays. When was the moment that you said, okay, it's been Ohio State, it's going to stay Ohio State? When did it, finalize for you?
I say when I came in the gym and sat down in my chair, and I was in the locker room for a good 5 minutes just thinking. It was either between Miami or Ohio State, and I just, last minute, Coach Jones said I got to go. I just stuck with Ohio State.
So there was a Miami hat in the back?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Gotcha. Did you have to look down, or you knew, the feel of the OSU one?
No, I had to look down.
I gotcha. On a lighter note, we can talk about sort of drama around your recruitment, but what about the recruit, right? What are Ohio State fans getting in Jeremiah Smith?
They're getting a humble person, go come into work, don't complain. It's just all about working football in school. You don't got to worry about me with all that extra stuff off the field. I'm just a guy who just want to play ball and go to school. That's all.
Did you officially sign the papers?
Yes, yeah.
Gotcha. Did you talk to any Ohio State coaches today?
Not today, no. My phone been on D&D for the last 2 days.
So they found out when the world found out?
Yeah.
Gotcha. Was that just a part of the process?
Yeah, that's a part of the process. Yeah. I didn't want to get too overwhelmed with the recruiting stuff from the last 2 days. My phone just been blowing up. So.
Well, I could show you Ryan Day's reaction when he found out you were in. I think he's just as relieved as you are. But congratulations.
Thank you.
It's finally over for you. When are you headed to Columbus?
I believe January 7th. January 7th, that's when I'll be up there.
Right around the corner.
Yeah.
But there he is, off the board, recruitment over for Jeremiah Smith.
You just saw the video. Now we are joined by the other person in the room. Not that it's any less important. It still is. John Garcia Jr., national recruiting analyst, joins us. We just saw Jeremiah as he signed with Ohio State. So walk me through the emotion of that moment. What was the feel in the room?
It was tense. It was a packed house. It's a small private school, so not a whole lot of room for everybody. And before all the players got out there, you're just like, where's Jeremiah? He ran to the locker room. He didn't come out until the very end of the sort of pre-game warm-up ceremony, if that makes sense. So really to himself, the body language was tense. He was nervous, covered his ears and his eyes at one different point. So all of us, journalistic, light bulbs go off. And you're like, something's up. Like, what's going on? Is Miami going to pull this shocker? And then obviously he gets on the mic and really short and succinct and says, hey, it's Ohio State. It's always been Ohio State. So he did admit afterwards that it was close, that Miami did have a hat in the duffel bag that he reached down into. But really, this was Ohio State's race to lose because that's where he's been committed for a year. And at the end of the day, he said it was a business decision. It's about development. It's about getting to Sundays. And obviously the Buckeyes have done that about as well at the receiver position as any school out there.
Well, you've been covering this entire process for him, right? So how surprised, or were you surprised by sort of the way any of it went down?
I think the facts, I wasn't surprised. The actual process of sticking with Ohio State was my expectation coming into the day. But when I got to the gym, I was like, do I need to tweak this story? Do I need to pull open the laptop here? Because it was palpable leading into that decision. Even some of the other Chaminade players and coaches sort of shared that almost that nervous, cautious energy before he announced. He even paused during the announcement, and everybody kind of got excited all at once. So there was definitely a pro Miami crowd, given the geography, and even some of his teammates were kind of egging him on to make the big flip. But obviously, he's stuck with Ohio State. So no surprise in that regard, but the process to get to that point absolutely caught me by surprise.
I absolutely feel for these kids in this moment when there's so much money and so much reputation and then home. All of these are parts of the decision. Now, he may not have flipped, but some players in your region did. And one of the big ones making news is KJ Bolden, obviously. Walk me through what you know about that decision and how it went down.
Yeah, well, according to KJ, and this is maybe the most surprising news in the Southern region, he said 3 weeks ago he started to shift towards Georgia. And that really does not reflect sort of how we covered this thing leading up until today. It was really more of a stick with Florida State or flip to Auburn situation. Georgia, really, over the last 48 hours, have become more a part of that possibility, not even that it was a given he was going to flip and stay in state. But he said it was 3 weeks ago when he started to figure that thing out. And really, kind of like Jeremiah, he went back to center. He tried to take the emotion out of it, and he tried to say, hey, look, where can I go where they're playing freshman defensive backs against great competition every day in practice, and obviously against great competition come Saturdays with sustained success. And obviously he didn't have to go more than an hour away from home to get that. And really, I was told those last few in-home visits from Kirby Smart in particular also went back to center and said, hey, you can go chase money wherever you want. You're going to get paid wherever you go. You might be a Sunday guy wherever you go, but in terms of accelerating that path and giving you the best opportunity to stay successful the entire time, it's no doubt at the University of Georgia. So that's where Bolden ultimately ends up.
Taking the emotion out of it is something that's so difficult for fans to do because fans have a rooting interest in all of it, but also difficult for an 18-year-old kid to do as they're trying to figure out their future. You mentioned the whole region. Any other moments there that have surprised you through the course of today?
Yeah, well, there was certain flips, but I think certain prospects staying put was just as big a story, not only with Jeremiah Smith, but I thought Edric Houston had a lot more flip conversation around his recruitment, maybe even than KJ Bolden leading into National Signing Day. And it was really just about one school, stick with Ohio State or flip to Alabama, which we knew coming in was going to have a really strong Wednesday in adding prospects. And he was going to be the headliner of that group. So I thought that was really huge for Ryan Day and company to come in with a couple of high-profile 5 stars, hold on to both officially. I thought was as big a news in the South for a Big Ten team as there can be.
Yeah, I just love the fact that for all the yelling and screaming we do about all of this, Ohio State continues to do well, Georgia continues to do well, Alabama continues. I mean, there's a method to it. That's all I'm saying. There seems to be a method to success across the board.
Yeah, 100%. I think we always, especially on signing day, have to remind ourselves like these kids they don't know about 10, 20, 50 years ago in college football. They know about like the last 5 years. That's about their wheelhouse for what the sport is. So yeah, Georgia, Bama, Ohio State, throwing an LSU and a Clemson, and that's kind of their entire scope of championship level programs. So you understand why to a certain degree they keep loading up.
Now I feel like an old man. I appreciate your insight. Thanks for the great work you do, my friend. Thanks for hanging out with us.
Thank you.
If you're just joining us, it's Rivals National Signing Day Live presented by Invesco QQQ. He's Adam Gorny, the National Recruiting Director for Rivals. I'm Jason Fitz, and it's key. I want to remind everybody we sit here with developing news. Let's say it that way, as we don't know right now what the status of Jeremiah Smith is. Update everybody, Adam, on the latest, as we just saw that interview. We just saw his signing this morning. It looked simple this morning. It looked simple this afternoon. It doesn't look simple right now.
Yeah, we know he showed up today with hats for Ohio State and Miami. He picked Ohio State. He signed the paperwork with Ohio State. He was doing interviews after it. It didn't seem like there was any real drama. He was there for about an hour after his signing. The papers never showed up at Ohio State. Ryan Day left. It seemed like everything was expected. He was told in his own press conference that Jeremiah Smith had committed to them. He showed relief. I think we're going to show some of that video. But then he said he couldn't talk about it because the paperwork wasn't there. The paperwork is still not there hours later. That's where we stand right now, and that's where it sits.
Yeah, I'm not the best with math, but it's 8:15 Eastern. So it seems like it's late. It seems like this is developing. Again, I promise you this. If we get any news, the bat phone is out, the signals are up in the air. We will keep up to date with every single ounce of it as it happens. In the meantime, I mentioned you're going to hear from superstar coaches, not the least of which was Matt Rhule. Remember, Nebraska lands a massive recruit in Dylan Rhule. Everybody's got their eyes on it. Gorny had the opportunity earlier to catch up with Coach. Check it out.
Walk me through the last week or so and his flip from Georgia to Nebraska and how that all went down.
Yeah, it was pretty tame, to be honest with you. Dylan reached out and just said, "Hey, Coach, I'm thinking about this. I'm thinking about coming to Nebraska. My heart's there, and I feel like it would mean a lot to me and my family to be there." Came and visited, and made the decision. So, I think I know he has a lot of respect for Georgia. I mean, what a great program, Kirby Smart. I just think growing up a Husker fan and probably seeing some of the progress that we made this year, some of the opportunities that he has to help in the future, and knowing what it would mean to Husker Nation for him and his family to come back here. I think that purpose was just too great.
So it's well documented. I mean, his dad played there, his uncle coaches there, all of those things. He's made numerous trips to Lincoln. Did you feel like you were building, or did you feel like at some point you had sort of lost him in this recruiting class, or did you continue to recruit him sort of to the end here?
No, once he made the decision to go to Georgia, we respected that. But I do have a relationship with him. When I would hear, I'd hear from him every once in a while after a big win. They did come out. The whole family came out to the Michigan game, which was not a great game for us. He came in the office the next day. Obviously, we were walking around, but I think it was a good thing. To be honest with you, Adam, he had a chance to see us in the office the next day after a tough loss. You find out a lot about people when they're going through some adversity, and we were the same guys. And so that relationship was a real relationship. We weren't ever talking about decommitting. We had moved on to Daniel Kalen, who we love and still do, and this was just, I think, something in his heart. And I think him having a chance through his uncle's eyes to see the way we're doing things, I think was really, really important.
This is as well as anybody. Recruiting is about momentum and building around a guy. How do you build around him to get some playmakers even more? And what kind of selling point can he be to guys in high school, guys in the portal to say, "Hey, come in, we're going to throw it a little bit more here"?
Yeah, I think everyone wants to play with a great quarterback. That there's no throw that they can't make. They're always going to give you a chance to win every game, and so I think it extends not just to the receivers but all across the board. And also in his case, to be someone that highly ranked, that highly recruited, to get Carter Nelson, who's the first or second tight end in this year's class, to get those guys to say, "Hey, you know what? We could go anywhere, but we're going to come to Nebraska." Hopefully signals to people that this is a place that's, we're no longer kind of asleep, like we're awake and we're moving and we're going and we're heading in the right direction.
I had a conversation yesterday about this, and Chris Peterson, the old Washington coach, told his quarterbacks that it's not going to go the way you expect it to always go. And so I think Nebraska fans might want to hear from you too. Like, there will be ups and downs here, right? Like, it's not just going to be smooth sailing the whole way. What should they expect as he comes in and gets ingratiated in the system and then really gets going as a potential starter down the road?
Yeah, I think the big thing for us, whether it's quarterbacks we have on the roster or Dylan or Daniel or anyone that comes in, that everything's earned here, nothing's given. The big thing for me with quarterbacks, as you just said, is I don't want to script success. I want them to learn the game from the ground up. And the best ones in the NFL, the best ones in college, they're the ones who learned a system. They learned a way of thinking. They learned a way of training. They learned, football intelligence. And so that's why it's important to me to have guys that start them as freshmen, so they learn sort of what it means to do things our way. And there'll be some highs, there'll be some lows. I think the biggest thing is your highs end up being higher than your previous highs, and your lows end up being higher than your previous lows. And I'm not real concerned when we recruit a freshman with where they are that first year. To me, it's where they are in their third year, their fourth year. Are we helping them achieve all of their goals? And we'll do that for Dylan. We'll teach them our way and watch them soar.
All right, Gorny, you've known Coach for a minute. I'm just saying, there's something about when you've got your quarterback, just makes you cool, calm, and collected. Like, we've talked to a lot of coaches today. I don't know that I've seen anybody just that relaxed throughout the whole process as Rhule just was.
Yeah, he was sitting back in his chair, pretty comfortable there. It was nice to see, actually.
Yeah, and speaking of coaches, I will remind you, we talked to a bunch of them. All day we've been talking to coaches. It's out there on YouTube. You can check out the interviews with a ton of different coaches about their classes. Make sure you check it out. In the meantime, can you have a show in the modern society if you don't rank things? Like, I feel like, I know it's early and these rankings change. It just feels like it's the right time to, are you ready to rank some things?
You need a list. Yeah, you need a list.
We need lists. We're going to do a list now for you. So knowing that things change and it's very early in the process, I figure it's time for Gorny's top 5. We're going to give you the top 5 recruiting classes so far. Like every good countdown, it's going to go from 5 to 1. And at number 5, you've got Ohio State. Tell me why.
Yeah, we start with Jeremiah Smith, and you know, we've talked about him at length already, but if he sends in his paperwork, the best player in this class by far. Edric Houston is another 5-star, and there was a lot of rumors that he was going to flip to Alabama. It didn't happen. Aaron Noland, a 5-star quarterback, lefty, put up huge numbers in his junior season. Aaron Scott and Bryce West, 2 of the best cornerbacks in the whole country.
I think you're burying the lead here. Jeremiah Smith's picture is amazing, and Aaron Noland got to be one of the coolest names I've heard all day. Let's just be honest about it. Like, we'll give credit to that. Okay, next up on the countdown, I feel like I can use my radio voice. Number 4. What do you got here from Miami?
Yeah, there were a lot of changes down the line here. Some wins, some losses for the Hurricanes, but still, you can't complain about a top 4 class. They flipped Justin Scott from Georgia. Zaquan Patterson had been committed for a long time. They flip Armando Blunt back. He had been committed to Miami, then to Florida State and back. They flip Adarius Hayes from Florida, and Nikar was committed to Georgia sometime. So Mario Cristobal, it's flip this time.
I love the way you couch that, though, because we've heard a lot about the players they lost today. Important to note who they've gained. So this is a good class. Yeah. All right, number 3. I gave my own reverb there. Texas coming in at number 3. Why do you have the Longhorns there?
Yeah, not a ton of news today from them, but a ton of sparkle and shine in this class. Colin Simmons was the number 1 player in the class. He still could be. I mean, he is just a phenomenal defensive end, what every coach wants in the 21st century. Brandon Baker, a great offensive tackle from the best program in the country out here at Mater Dei. Ryan Wingo, some news this morning. He hadn't gotten up early enough for some, but was not flipping to Missouri. He sticks with Texas. Xavier Filsame flips from Florida earlier this week. And Kobe Black, one of the best corners in the country. So a loaded class for Texas.
We've got plenty to break down on Wingo that will come later in the show. Also, Sparkle and Shine might be the name of our new duo. Let's go to number 2 on the list. Almost there, almost to the top of the land.
Yeah, no drama, Julian Sayin, just as pure as can be as a quarterback, a phenomenal player from Carlsbad, could be the future in Tuscaloosa. Ryan Williams reclasses from 2025 to 2024, is still a 5-star wide receiver, and might be among that top group. Peyton Woodyard had flipped from Georgia to Alabama, a great safety. Zabian Brown, again, another kid from California. Alabama spends a lot of time out here. They must like the sunshine. And Jalen Mbakwe, just a phenomenal athlete who they're going to use in the secondary. So the Crimson Tide, unsurprisingly, loading up everywhere, but especially in the secondary.
In a year where we keep talking about the fact that the top 10 recruits have all gone to 10 different schools, you still see some of the same brands at the top. Also, am I Sparkle or am I Shine? I don't know. Let's go to the top of the list. At number 1, the best class in all the land belongs to Georgia. Why?
Shocking, right?
Yeah,
shocking, just shocking.
It's amazing.
Ellis Robinson is just a man. I mean, a 5-star cornerback, just so physical and big, just outstanding. Justin Williams, hard-hitting linebacker from Texas, will be phenomenal in Kirby Smart's defense. KJ Bolden, flip today from Florida State. So he's 3rd. Nasir Johnson, I'm sorry, my eyes are giving away. Just an outstanding defensive tackle, big and mean, flipped from Florida. and Andre Evans, just another athletic player who can go all over the field.
You know, I think I speak for all of America when I say it's about time. Georgia had a great recruiting class.
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
it's been really lean. Okay, I'm kidding. Throughout the course of this process, some things are not surprising. Seeing Georgia at the top of the list is one of those. Now, as I mentioned on the Rivals National Signing Day Live show presented by Invesco QQQ, we've got a ton of big-name coaches coming at you, a ton of announcements coming at you, and we will keep you updated. If you're just tuning in, the big drama right now is Jeremiah Smith seems to be signed, may not. The letter is not yet turned in. If we get breaking news on that, we will absolutely get you updated. But we also have to get you updated on some of the other great players that had their transactions today, their opportunities today to really stand up and have their moment. One of those players was Amaris Williams. Check out a little bit of our interview with him.
Adam Freeman, Rivals.com, here with the best player in North Carolina. He just announced his commitment to Auburn. Congratulations for signing to Auburn. The Auburn Tigers is the team that you've been looking at for months and months and months. The Tigers were one of those teams that you circled after you got to know those coaches. What was it about Auburn and those coaches that made you feel like it was the spot for you?
It was really the relationships I had with them going on the visit there. Even though it was my last visit, I felt the peace, and I felt the peace in my heart, being that I can be myself around these people that I were around. You know, when we went to dinner, breakfast, and everything, walking through the facilities, having conversations with them, especially having a conversation with Coach JG, defensive line coach. He grew up the same way I grew up, had the same, past childhood. He basically, I feel like I can play under him, and I can go talk to him about anything, especially about football, but not only about football, but about life at the same time. With him growing up the same way I did, in different circumstances. So I feel like that relationship would be a big key in me and him developing me into a man and hopefully, a future NFL draft pick. So,
well, you certainly have the talent to make it to the NFL. We've seen you for the last few years, playing obviously on the defensive side of the ball, rushing the passer, blowing up running plays, chasing down ball carriers. But on the offensive side of the ball, you play running back and you break off huge runs. You're running away from defensive backs. You're running over linebackers and defensive linemen there. So how does Auburn want to use your versatility at the next level?
Basically, I talked to them. They were saying, like, I can go from end, to 3, back to, like, the edge rusher. Basically, me being versatile, me being, the weight I am, 265, basically running like a 4.6, with my speed and my twitch. I can play anywhere on the line. I mean, those, that's not really my
maybe in
but
pass rushing situations, right?
Yeah.
After third and long, they'll put you at nose so you can beat up the center, right?
Yeah, basically. But, being that I'm a versatile big defensive lineman, I can play anywhere on the D line and, cause chaos. So they just said, and, in different, what's the word? In different
schemes, different
Yeah,
lineups.
different. So, like third and long, I go to defensive end, rush the passer. Second and 15, I'm I can play 3 technique, stop the run and everything like that. So.
All right, so that's a little bit of Amaris Williams' thoughts on where he's going to land or how his career is going to look. Give me your thoughts on what he means for Auburn.
It's huge. He's a 6'3", 270-pound defensive end. Florida really wanted him, but it's just great for Hugh Freeze in that defense. He looks like Auburn's defensive ends look already. He also plays running back in high school. I'm not going to tackle him.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, let's just be honest. At that size, he's coming down the pipeline. I'm moving. Yeah. I'm just, I'm making a personal life decision there. I'm just getting out of the way. Now, you just saw Adam Friedman interview Amaris Williams, but here earlier is a little bit Gorny talking to him about not just Amaris, but the rest of that region.
Adam, you were with Amaris Williams earlier today for his live announcement flipping from Florida to Auburn. How did that go down, and was there a surprise there at the end?
It wasn't totally surprising. Amaris had been trending towards Auburn for a couple of weeks now, and that official visit that he took to Auburn just before signing day really kind of sealed the deal. His relationship with the coaching staff there was just much stronger, much more natural, is kind of the way that he put it, than it was with the coaches at Florida. And he'd honestly been recruiting for Auburn for a couple of weeks. He kind of thought that he might end up at Auburn. He was working on KJ Bolden. He's been working on LJ McCray. Hopefully, for him at least, that turns out the way he wants to. But Amaris is a pretty special defensive prospect, and Florida kind of took it on the chin losing him.
Yeah, there was some messages traded earlier today that maybe he's like the ringleader behind getting some of those guys to Auburn. Didn't work out with Bolden. Still working on McCray. What kind of player is Auburn getting? Because he's a 6'5", 270-pound defensive end.
Yeah, I mean, he's really special. I mean, you can watch his film. I mean, he's playing running back and taking handoffs and running over defensive linemen, running over linebackers, and running away from defensive backs as he runs for long touchdowns. I mean, this guy's a really special athlete. The quickness he brings, the speed he brings to the field, and the strength and aggressiveness off the line of scrimmage is tremendous. And I think as they coach him up when he gets to Auburn, he's going to be a force to be reckoned with. They're going to be able to move him all over that line of scrimmage, and they're going to be able to find mismatches for him. He's going to be a constant presence in the backfield for Auburn.
Another defensive lineman who ended up at Wisconsin, kind of took a circuitous route there from Maryland to IMG Academy in Florida, back to Maryland, but now has found his spot with the Badgers, is Ernest Willer. Very talented player, someone that could definitely be developed in Madison. Tell us about him.
Yeah, Ernest is going to see the field pretty early in his career. He is a physically mature player. He has quickness, he has strength, he has technique, and he kind of just dominated his senior year in Maryland. The level of competition just wasn't nearly what it was, what he was getting when he was at IMG as a junior. I think that he's physically ready to see the field. He'll be in the rotation early on when he gets to Wisconsin, and kudos to the Badgers for really staying on him, developing those relationships, because when he moved back up to Maryland, where I live, from IMG Academy, it kind of seemed like he was destined to end up at Maryland. The Terps do a fantastic job with in-state prospects like Ernest, and it just kind of seemed like it was going to end up there. But Wisconsin stayed on him, made him feel welcome, made him feel like part of their family, and showed him that there's an opportunity there for him.
I don't want to say Lugar Dedepaye is a project, but 6'6", 225. There's a lot to work with there, and a lot of projection, a lot of length. What is Michigan getting in him?
Yeah, I mean, a four-star defensive end, the guy with a basketball background, tremendous basketball background, really. I think he's not shy about really calling himself a project. He wants to go somewhere where he's going to be developed. He wants somewhere that is going to make sure that he is physically ready to play, but he also has a skill set that could help him maybe see the field early on as a pass rusher in certain situations. And that's why he chose Michigan, because they are going to develop him physically. He talked about Coach Herbert, the strength and conditioning coach there, who has really garnered a tremendous reputation. And I think that was very important to him. Maryland, Rutgers, and Minnesota were all over him during the process, and he almost took an official visit to Florida State this past weekend. That didn't end up happening, and now he ends up signing with Michigan.
And lastly, at NC State, Kevin Concepcion really came on strong this year. They're looking like one of the top players in the ACC. The Wolfpack have done really well at wide receiver this year, and one of them is a flip to Keenan Jackson. How important was it getting him to Raleigh for Dave Doran's staff?
Yeah, big time flip. I will add about Kevin Concepcion, Rivals, the only company with him as a four-star prospect coming out of high school. But Keenan Jackson was a tremendous player. He put up 1,700 receiving yards this year, 20 touchdown receptions. Tremendous player, big physical outside receiver who can really stretch the field. And once he gets the ball in his hands, he's really difficult for defensive backs to bring down. He's going to be a nice complement to Concepcion, to Jonathan Paylor, who's a tremendous receiver slot weapon on the offensive side of the ball. And I think he'll be able to open up the field a little bit for those guys underneath. Keenan Jackson's going to be a big time addition for the NC State offense.
All right, that's Rivals national recruiting analyst Adam Friedman. Thanks.
Thanks, Adam.
It's Rivals National Signing Day Live, presented by Invesco QQQ. He's Adam Gorny, National Recruiting Director for Rivals. I'm Jason Fitz. And By the way, you get the ATH, the athlete marker now, because you've given us sparkle, shine, and circuitous all in the same show. I'm just saying, that's a level of versatility, obviously, that's impressive. I think we should give a little credit here. Before we get to our next interview, we should give a second of credit to Texas, because you mentioned earlier how highly you have them ranked. There's one big reason why they are ranked that high, and there's a quarterback that's part of that conversation, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, this should go without being said. But they did another great job. They flipped Ty Anthony Smith. They got Trey Owens. They've done a phenomenal job.
Yeah, well, the big signings are part of the reason Texas is so high on this list, and that's something that you had the opportunity earlier to talk to our very own Greg Smith about. Check a little of this out.
A lot of storylines in the Midwest. Greg Smith, national recruiting analyst. Ryan Wingo is definitely one of them. Ended up signing with Texas. Really no drama, but at about 6 a.m. this morning, a lot of rumors about a flip to Missouri. Depends on who you believe. It seemed like the Longhorns were in pretty good control here the whole way. How do you kind of see it, Greg?
Yeah, it's always interesting when you get kind of those late night dramas that start the night before, and really people always say signing day or things don't begin until the night before signing day, right? And so it kind of started bubbling up last night with Ryan Wingo. Was Missouri going to make a push late? Was Nebraska and Dylan Raiola going to make a push late because those two guys are so close? But then there was drama this morning where it didn't know if he was awake or not. He actually put out a tweet that, "Hey, I'm up," which was really one of my favorite storylines of the entire day. It was very funny. But in the end, he signs with Texas with what appeared to be minimal drama. And he's off to the 40 acres to play for Steve Sarkisian.
One recruit who did flip, and it's a pretty big one, that might not have gotten the attention just because of the other 5-star receivers, such a loaded group, is Jeremiah McClellan. Very talented, strong, physical receiver who can also game break it a little bit. He flips from Ohio State to Oregon. Did you see that one coming? Because a few days ago, McClellan told me the only hat on the table would be Ohio State.
Yeah, that was one that I was kind of tracking, because it was a situation where I think, with all of the talk about it in Ohio State's wide receivers, it was so much about Jeremiah Smith that Jeremiah McClellan almost became an afterthought. And I honestly think that was part of Oregon's pitch here, right? Mm-hmm. That, hey, we don't want you don't need to go to Ohio State and be kind of their third guy, because they had Graham, another talented wide receiver in that class as well. You could come here and fight to be that number one guy. And I think that whole pitch and how all of this unfolded around his recruitment, I think really won out for Oregon. Dan Lanning did it again with another nice flip. But yeah, I was tracking this one because I thought that something could be going on there with McClellan and Oregon. A lot of people thought Missouri for a while, the home state school, but Oregon was the one that was quietly doing work there and behind the scenes, and they won out.
Two teams very busy in the Big Ten today. Ohio State, one of them. Yes, they lost McClellan, but they got the big dog. J.J. Smith is the number one player in the country, one of the best receivers in a whole while here at Rivals. And then keeping Edric Houston. A lot of rumors over the last 48 hours that he was going to flip to Alabama. Ohio State got to keep him. How big was that for the Buckeyes?
Yeah, I mean, both are huge. Like, anytime you hold on to the number one player in the country, like, that's going to get the headlines, and rightfully so, because Smith is just such a fantastic player. He's rated where he is with us for a reason. But I think that Houston was just as big of a deal, because when you start to talk about the kind of narrative around Ohio State and what's going on there and what Ryan Day needs to change, and they need to get better in the trenches, they need to be tougher up front. If they had lost a 5-star defensive lineman on signing day, even though it would have been, nothing to sneeze at to lose him to Nick Saban in Alabama, at the same time, you don't want to do that, especially when you're chasing Michigan still. And part of the reason they're losing is because what's happening in the trenches. So, like, keeping Edric Houston, I think, was just a huge deal for them.
That's a tough physical football team. Like he said after Notre Dame, he told Lou Holtz off. So yeah, that's good. And then Nebraska's the other team. Obviously, some Dylan Raiola hangover from the other day, and everybody's feeling great there. But they also closed great today. They got Larry Tarver. They flipped him. Vincent Shavers in Miami parted ways. He ends up at Nebraska. And then they come back around on Amari Sanders and get him. So Raiola was definitely big. They did well, getting Bricks and Carter Nelson. But even on signing day, they've made some noise.
Yeah, and it was impressive noise in South Florida, right? Like it's kind of interesting as we've all talked. I know you've talked to Matt Rhule about Texas and how important Texas is to that staff, but to see them close that way in Florida, led by kind of Evan Cooper, defensive backs coach, is from Florida. They've got Philip Simpson, who's kind of a high school coaching legend, who's also on the staff, helping to kind of spearhead that as well. So to see them do what they did in Miami, I think is a really big deal, and I think will be part of the formula moving forward for Matt Rhule and his staff. You can pluck a few kids from South Florida. You can get 5 or 6 from Texas, and then get a bunch of kids from Nebraska and in the Midwest. I think that's the formula for them. But they did close well, and of course, like you said, it started with kind of flipping Dylan Raiola, the 5-star quarterback from Georgia, who now all things will be turned to what they can do in the portal, and then what's going to happen in 25 for them, because they could be a team to watch in 25.
Okay, that is national recruiting analyst Greg Smith. Thanks, Greg.
Thank you.
He's Adam Gorny. I'm Jason Fitz. It's Rivals National Signing Day Live, presented by Invesco QQQ. Now, we are hanging out in the Yahoo studios in Los Angeles, right? We're right down from beautiful Hollywood, California. I would argue the big drama right now is in Hollywood, Florida, perhaps, as I do need to get everybody updated on the latest, greatest from Jeremiah Smith. You just saw his name listed there, number 1 recruit. Everybody's talking so incredibly about where he's going to be. This morning it looked like Ohio State. The latest, if you're just tuning in, is that there are some, at least, complications. What's your level of concern? As we know now that the letter has apparently been signed but has not been turned in. That's as much as we think we know. What's your level of concern?
Yeah, I mean, it continues to grow and grow for Ohio State and their fans and what's going on. I mean, he signed this letter hours and hours ago, and he is not a kid that is just trying to manufacture drama. He does not want any part of this, from what I know of him, for knowing him for over 2 years. So I think something is going on behind the scenes. This is definitely an interesting situation that has not resolved itself.
Yeah, we didn't know we'd have breaking drama as we go through the show, but we do, and we'll keep you updated as we go also. Now, we also get to keep you updated on happy news, because who doesn't love a little excitement like camp? I don't know what your camp experience has been like, but my camp experience was pretty awesome. Now we get to talk about the Rivals Camp Series. It's back for its 12th year. We can officially announce the locations of the camps and combines in 2024. You see them there on the screen. You got Jersey, you got Charlotte, you got Atlanta, you got Dothan, you got Miami, you got Dallas, you got Indianapolis. I'll learn to speak. You got Los Angeles, all of these different, and then there will be the Rivals 5-Star Challenge location to be TBD. But this is amazing. Do you have a favorite city that you like to go to? Before we get to memories, do you have a favorite city?
I like to get in my car and drive down the road to a camp. That's my favorite thing. So LA is what I like the most, but they're all very good locations because of the talent level, and that's what stands out so much, is that in Dallas, in Atlanta, in Indianapolis, those Midwest kids could get hungry and try to prove themselves. In Jersey, great locations, excited for another year.
I think you can see where the recruiting hubs are by how that map looked. That being said, there's been some huge moments and huge names that have come through camps. Any favorite camp memory?
Yeah, pretty much every NFL roster is touched by the Rivals Camp Series. The year in Indianapolis with Justin Fields and Trevor Lawrence, that was special. They were the number 1. We don't always get it right, Fitz, but Trevor Lawrence we got right, Justin Fields we got right. Trevor Lawrence was the number 1 quarterback, number 1 player in the country. Justin Fields was right there at number 2. Phenomenal players. They showed out at that camp, and so did Amon-Ra St. Brown of the Detroit Lions, now kicking footballs, throwing them back to the quarterbacks. Nobody could stop them.
I'm shooketh by the fact that you got these huge names, because it just makes me, I'll go back to my music days. Like, everybody wants to say they saw the band before the band was famous. Like, this is that equivalent of, like, you walked into a garage and all of a sudden you saw Pearl Jam just, like, rocking out on the ground. Like, that's where you are with this thing. The talent that you're talking about is absolutely incredible.
Yeah, some people love covering guys when they're in the NFL and they're known guys, or in college. We know them when they're in high school and they're just coming up. That's what's so great about it, so interesting, and they're still kids.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting part of this whole process is to see the growth. Now, as we get you caught up on everything you need to know throughout the course of the day and what it means for programs right now, there's also a greater conversation about what it means for college football as a whole. We had a sit-down yesterday with Yahoo Sports writer Ross Dellinger. Check out a little of our conversation about what all of today means for college football as a whole. All right, Ross, let's start with Michigan. Always controversy around the program in general. There's investigations. We all know that. How did, in your mind, did the investigations of Michigan's season impact the transfer portal and recruiting?
Well, it certainly was a big story, maybe the biggest story of the year was the Michigan sign stealing, but I don't know that it really impacted them at signing day and in the portal and all that. Um, they still had an incredible year. We'll be playing for the championship, so I don't know that it impacted them off the field in the recruiting a ton. Now, what could impact them is the future of their head coach, right? Down the line here, and if Jim Harbaugh is if he going to be and continue to be Michigan's head coach, or is he interested in going off like the last 2 years? We've seen him interested in some other jobs as far as the NFL level. So I'm sure that could impact them, from a transfer situation. But I didn't see, and you guys may be different, but I didn't see too much of an impact from their recruiting. One thing that Jim Harbaugh is known to do, right, is take the 3 stars and make them 5s and develop them, and he certainly has done that over the last few seasons.
Let's talk about the biggest recruiting story of the week, and Dylan Rhule flipping to Nebraska. It kind of came down that was sort of expected, not a complete shock at the end, the last couple of days. Nebraska was a team that did not have much offense this past year. I mean, kind of stopped throwing the ball. Can one player really change the program around? Does Matt Rhule need to take this and really start building around Raiola now?
Yeah, I mean, there's examples through the years of one player, specifically quarterback, right, changing, having such an impact on not just a team but a whole program for years. The one that kind of comes to mind is like Tim Tebow signing at Florida, and like what that did for Urban Meyer and the Gators winning 2 national championships and all that, and the momentum that it built in recruiting with that class at Florida. That was huge when you look back on it. So I think Raiola's decision certainly feels like it could have that impact with Nebraska. But let's be honest. Like, football is not like basketball, right? Where one player on basketball that you get out of the portal can completely change your team immediately, right? And have this big boost. I mean, how many 4 or 5-star quarterbacks have we seen over the years just not be able to be productive and thrive and just kind of faded? Certainly, Raiola does feel like the kind of kid that could bring program changes overall to Nebraska.
Let's upset some people with the college football playoff. Did they get it right? How do you keep Florida State out as an undefeated team? We get the Jordan Travis stuff. How does Georgia lose a game to a team like Alabama and fall from 1 out? How did they get it right, Ross?
No, I don't think so. And I try not to be a columnist and try not to put too many opinions out there. I like to play it straight as a reporter, but I will say, keeping out, an undefeated major conference champion, it just doesn't sit with me right. Now, I will say, did they pick the best team? If Alabama and Florida State played right now, I'm sure Alabama will be favored. I'm sure most of the people in that committee room would pick Alabama to win the game. But I kind of blame this system. And I sat in that committee room to do the mock CFP selections a few years ago. And you sit in their seat, you sit in the committee member seats, you do like a mock of a previous year, and you rank all the teams like they do. You do everything that they do. You do it in a smaller scale in just a few hours instead of over amount of weeks or days. But I remember leaving that, thinking, what the hell are we doing? Like, it's just so silly, because you're just pouring over all of these ridiculous statistics and numbers and figures. I just wish there was more of a way to determine playoff spots on the field And we're doing that, right? We're going to do that a little more, at least, with an expanded playoff.
Yeah, you're right about that mock committee process. I walked away when I did it thinking, man, it's amazing how one dominant person can totally change a room. Also, I don't envy the committee members. Real quick, we got to get you out of here. But obviously, hiring cycle is about to change in the NFL too. Do you see any college coaches that you look at and say, man, that person's headed to the NFL this offseason?
Well, certainly mentioned Jim Harbaugh, right? I mean, he's done it the last couple of years. He's flirted with some NFL jobs, maybe was a finalist for a few, and just either didn't get it or pulled out of it or whatever. So you've got to think, especially given what might be coming NCAA penalty wise for him next year. Again, remind everybody, he agreed to take a 4-game suspension earlier this year for COVID violations, recruiting violations that happened totally separate from the sign stealing. He agreed to 4 games, and the NCAA basically said that wasn't enough. Okay, he took 3 games, and then the Big Ten suspended him for 3 more games over the sign stealing. But just for the COVID period, just for that investigation, he only took 3 games. And again, NCAA said 4 wasn't enough. So he's going to at least have some leftover penalty from that COVID dead period, probably of recruiting violations. And then the sign stealing stuff, it's going to get wrapped up at some point, right? And you're going to have a penalty there. So given all that, and given his past of flirting with NFL jobs, I would think he's the main one to watch when it comes to NFL openings.
Make sure you're reading him on Yahoo Sports. Follow him on all social media at Ross Dellinger. Ross, appreciate your time, my friend.
Yep, no problem.
He's Adam Gorny. I'm Jason Fitz. It's Rivals National Signing Day Live, presented by Invesco QQQ. We're breaking down all of the information, but I have to say, today's one piece of the puzzle. As much as everybody wants to obsess over winners and losers today, we do it, everybody will do it. It's one piece, because signing day is no longer it's part of it, and you have to include the transfer portal in it, right? Like, it feels like now, we spent all day talking to coaches, and they all weigh the transfer portal differently.
Yeah, transfer portal is recruiting 2.0. I mean, some coaches use it a lot, some coaches don't use it yet, some coaches will, some coaches just refuse to. But there are a ton of players in there. You could revitalize a roster very, very quickly. Ohio State's starting quarterback goes to Syracuse. Oklahoma's starting quarterback goes to Oregon. UCLA's starting quarterback goes to Oregon. So the transfer portal is amazing. It has completely changed how recruiting works, and every coach has his own philosophy about it.
As we both spent all day talking to coaches, you can check those interviews out on YouTube, by the way. We've got a ton of different interviews out there. I talked to one coach today that was adamant. He did not want to use the transfer portal because he wanted guys that he knew their families, he knew sort of their relationships. It seems like that makes sense, but not every coach is that way. That being said, give me some names that stand out in the portal that you see that are difference makers.
Yeah, I think we start at number 1, Walter Nolan. He was a 5-star coming out of high school. He is a 5-star in the portal. He has been very productive at A&M, and he's only going to get better. He's down to Ole Miss and Oregon now, so he already has his recruitment going again. And then there's Evan Stewart, the 5-star wide receiver who led Texas A&M in receiving the last 2 years, his first 2. And let's be honest, he didn't have Joe Montana throwing him the ball in College Station. So he's been phenomenal.
I think, you got to look at that sometimes and say, hey, Texas A&M guys trying to get out of Texas A&M makes sense. When there's a coaching change, guys want change. But we're obsessed with quarterbacks. You've got some. Who stand out as your top quarterbacks?
Yeah, and this is a really strong quarterback class, too, in the portal. And I say class, but it's in the portal. Dante Moore started as a freshman at UCLA. He's gone to Oregon. He's been telling people, look, I need some time here. I need to get ingratiated into a program. That's why I think he's comfortable sitting behind Dylan Gabriel for a year in Eugene and then taking over and being the superstar that we projected him to be as a 5-star. And then Cam Ward, who's already a superstar. He was great at Incarnate Word. Then Washington State puts up huge numbers. Everybody wants him. It looks like Miami or Florida State, but everybody's going to want him.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to look at some of these quarterbacks. Just look at this year's Heisman, and you see the benefit of a quarterback with experience. Now, you mentioned Florida State. I don't think that there's been a more polarizing conversation than Florida State and everything they've gone through for the last several months. And we know that whether it's talking about playoffs, whether it's talking about today. You had the chance earlier today to talk to Florida State head coach Mike Norvell. Here's a little of that conversation.
This is Adam Gorny, Rivals.com signing day show, wrapping up here another busy signing day. And Mike, when you swing the bat, there's a lot of home runs, some misses along the way. You still have a top 10 class, very proud of it, I'm sure. And it starts with quarterback. And I want to talk about Luke Kromenhoek a little bit because credit to you guys for early evals on him because he was not highly recruited, but you saw something in him. And when you talk about, potential in a quarterback and what he could be 3-4 years down the road, what do you see in Luke?
I mean, I say just an incredible competitor, just a wonderful young man. I mean, for all that he does on the field, I mean, who he is off the field, I mean, just his heart, his work ethic, the passion and desire to be great. And it was really something that stood out to us early. I mean, his sophomore year, he started at receiver and defensive back, got a chance to be on a state championship team. And, obviously as he, waited his turn, made the most of every opportunity, but we actually had him committed before he ever started his first game on varsity at quarterback. But I saw the talent. We got to work with him in camps, but I believed in what he would be, and he had all the characteristics to be successful. And his first year, he leads his team to a state championship, and is just developed into one of the best quarterbacks in the United States of America. And there's nobody else I'd rather be doing it with in this class than Luke. And he's just a special young man.
Running back commit Cameron Davis, built like just a rock. And was courted by a lot of other programs, stayed true to Florida State. How important can he be in the offense as that guy that you could just hand the ball off to and trust?
No, I mean, he's a game changer, and he really can do it all. Another young man that you can watch the player, but you don't really get a true appreciation of him until you get to know who he is. Just the leader that he is, the work ethic, the desire. I mean, he can really do it all. He did it all for his high school program. Whether it's playing quarterback, doing whatever he needed to do to help put them in a position to be successful. And he's been committed for a couple of years now, and he believed at the beginning in the vision of what was ahead. And, we got a chance to live it out and see him, continue to grow to one of the best running backs in the country, and just so proud of him and excited about what he's going to bring into our program.
Charles Lester, early on, we ranked him as an athlete because he played both ways and was super athletic and can kind of do a whole lot of everything. Did you see the same thing? And is it true you put your best athletes on defense and let them dominate over there?
Well, I mean, Charles is a special athlete, and he really can do it all. And we think that he's going to be a dynamic player for us, in a lot of different ways. But when you take his ball skills, just the instincts, what people don't understand about Charles, he's one of the smartest football players that I've ever recruited. I mean, just his football IQ, understanding, being able to retain information and apply it throughout the course of a game or a workout. I mean, he's just really, remarkable in all that he can do with that. And he's somebody that we've been building a relationship for over the last few years, and to see him grow, to see his ability and talent, but also just who he is we're expecting a fast impact here at Florida State, and I think he kind of leads what is a special defensive back group for us, that a lot of guys that have we had 4 DBs that signed and all have very similar characteristics with versatility and game changing skill sets.
Have you talked to the recruits, or have they asked about the playoff situation, your feelings on it? Clearly, it's struck everyone that you go from this euphoric championship to then anger and disappointment 12 hours later. And also, do you sort of reject the argument that you're not deserving because you're going to be playing a backup quarterback, or can you at least appreciate that somewhat?
Well, I mean, I think for the recruits, I mean, obviously there's a lot of people that they loved watching what we did. And, it is, I think more than anything else, through, just the challenge of, losing a great player due to injury and, obviously the adversity that was presented. I mean, seeing the response of our team, seeing the character of our team, the closeness, just, how our guys were able to rally around each other, something that's really celebrated. And, it's unfortunate and disheartening, and, all the feelings that, that we're not, you didn't get an opportunity there in the playoff, but it's still about controlling things that we can control. And we see when you see the culture that has been established, when you see the response that our players were able to put on display for 13 weeks throughout the season. I mean, something that players and recruits want to be a part of, and they know that they can bring their talents into this program. They can bring their personalities, their character, and continue to push us to even higher heights. And that's something that I'm looking forward to, and just proud of our team and the way they've handled things.
Gorny, I got to give Mike Norvell a lot of credit for just showing up. Another tough day for Florida State. He still showed up to the interview.
Yeah, absolutely. And any year he comes on our show, I'm going to compliment him. So a phenomenal job for him to come out after what happened with the college football playoff. Some tough strikes today for him and the Seminoles class. But hey, they still finished 11 in the country. That's not too shabby.
That is not too shabby, but I don't think that's going to be great enough to get you an award because it is award time. It's never too early for award season. The Gorny Awards, I want awards named after me. This is where you give out awards from the best action today. I wish we had an orchestra to play us on and off, but we'll start with, I'll give you presenting. Like I'll give my big presenting the award for best drama. Who do you have for best drama?
This is what everyone's been waiting for. So best drama is Jeremiah Smith. I think we've talked about that one already.
Now, that jacket is best drama. I mean, my God, that's fire. Send it to me. Okay, next award goes Return to Sender. Oh, that's clever.
Yeah, return to center Armando Blunt was committed to Miami, flips to Florida State. On signing day, flips back.
Oh, I like that. Yeah, got some free meals out of it. All right, the next award, Stand By Your Man. Who do you got?
I like that. DJ Lagway. So many rumors that he was going to flip to USC on signing day. Baylor, Houston, Texas A&M tried. They couldn't get him. He stays with Florida.
The next one, I can't wait to see what this one is. The next award is Sleeping in St. Louis.
I've done this a long time. This is the first time I talked about when someone was waking up on signing day. Ryan Wingo stays with Texas instead of picks Missouri.
All right, and our last award of these, you've got more awards coming, but the last award here, Hurry Up and Wait Award.
Yeah, Jordan Seaton takes a visit to Colorado a few weeks ago, signs up with Deion Sanders, doesn't sign today. Looks like Maryland is involved, Alabama, Ohio State, Tennessee, a lot of schools for Jordan Seaton.
It would not be a day if we weren't talking about Deion Sanders somehow, some way. Here's what I know. I would remind everybody today to have a little bit of grace and patience. These are kids that are making huge decisions that impact their families and their lives. And while we're all fans, and it's easy to yell at them as fans, let's remember as human beings, if you had to make the same decisions they're making at their age, there's a ton of pressure that comes with it. I commend every kid that took the opportunity today to really seize their future, and I think this is a moment to celebrate, not to go after any of them. In the meantime, we have to celebrate everybody behind the scenes. It takes an entire village to make shows like this happen so that the two of us can sit here and just yell and scream. So for everybody behind the scenes that took the time to do this show for us and to help us with the show, we thank them. We thank you for watching, and I say this all the time, follow us on social media, but particularly follow Gorny on social media because what we know right now is the drama is not over with the #1 recruit in the country. So if there's ever been a reason to make sure you are sticking with us throughout the course of the night on Rivals, on Yahoo Sports, and with Adam Gorny, make sure you're doing it. I'm Jason Fitz. On behalf of everybody behind the scenes that makes this show happen, thank you so much for watching Rivals National Signing Day live, presented by Invesco QQQ.